Disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of SELACO. This show protects the right of free speech and can promote any lifestyle, belief, or any other practice. This show is for education, information, and enlightenment. Listen at your own discretion.
The lights are off, our love is gone. I just can't see where I went wrong. Can't you see what you're doing to me?
Hello, thank you for joining us. You've been listening to the musicians Blue Skies from the city of Bell. We're currently recording from the city of Huntington Park. My name is Eztli. I'm your host for the night. I'm joined with Frank Cardenas. He's a co-host / guest for the night. And I'm with the man behind the project, the producer and the editor, Christian Caro. Today, this is the inaugural podcast of SELACO from the Casa. And the reason why we brought it upon ourselves to create this podcast is to talk about issues that are affecting our communities, not just in Southeast LA, but globally as well. And we want to provide a space on the internet and physical space for people in the communities to come and express their thoughts on many issues, from education to arts and culture to the lack of community. So we've been working on SELACO, Southeast LA Collective, for the last about month and a half, and what we are striving to do is meet the needs of these cities. When I say cities, I mean Bell Gardens, Huntington Park, Maywood, Cudahy, and there's a
The Southeast LA.
join us eventually for the next the Southeast LA community in
Yeah,
general.
really quick, Eric.
Thank you, Frank.
It'll probably be out on YouTube before it's out on iTunes. 'Cause we
Okay,
gotta get that out
so
before,
what is this? This is of course a podcast, and it's gonna be the first one. It's gonna be aired on iTunes and YouTube, and we are hoping that we get enough people to listen and more people to join us eventually for the next podcast to come.
really quick, Eric. It'll probably be out on YouTube before it's out on iTunes because I gotta get that all situated. So look for it on YouTube. I'll post it up on the Selaco Facebook as well.
Okay, I'll post it on my Facebook as well and Tumblr.
It's gonna be all over the internet.
All right, sweet. Okay, so why are we doing this? Christian Caro, you're the one that hit me up, and pretty much you seem really passionate about this idea. Why do you feel we need a podcast?
Well, Eric, I saw what you were doing with your open mic night, and I thought the podcast would be a perfect opportunity for you to sit down with the people that go to your open mic and have a really great conversation with them and record it and share it with people. Because you don't get that opportunity at the open mic night. You don't get to sit down for a period of time and talk to them.
Sweet, sweet. That sounds good, because a lot of times at these open mics, I started for the people that don't know who Celico is or who I am. I started an open mic called Alivio, and with the help of the community, including Frank and many other people, I've been able to create this really healthy space from my garage, and we just basically had to do that because of the lack of cultural centers in the Southeast LA community. And so this podcast really matters because at open mics we listen to the poets and the musicians, but they get off the stage and we don't have time to really connect with them, like get to know who they are. And I think this is a great thing because we'll be able to have more poets and musicians from the local community that can express themselves.
We'll have in-depth interviews with people that say some really radical, really amazing educational things up on stage, and actually have the opportunity to get into those discussions and figure out what they think about it, where they're coming from, how they figured these things out, where they learned, and be able to pass that knowledge on to you. Part of the reason of having the podcast and the open mic in the first place is to create that community, to create the forum where people in these different cities in the Southeast LA area can come and collaborate. Am I wrong?
No, definitely. And it's not gonna be just open to the poets and musicians that go on the stage at Alivio or at these open local mics. There's a lot of people that are really shy and don't want to really go on the stage, but they're down to come to like the Casa and just talk, talk about real
Yeah.
issues. Like, so I think this gives them another platform. It's all about building like platforms,
Networking.
networking. So, Frank, why did you decide to become involved with SELACO?
Well, first of all, the Southeast LA community is very near and dear to me. I was born actually over in Bellflower. I spent a lot of time in in East LA in Boyle Heights as a kid with my grandma and stuff. Now I live in South Whittier, and it's been really inspirational to just come back to LA after going to college and see that there were people trying to make things better. And Eric, you know, because you've worked with me on some other organizing projects and some different stuff, and coming back to LA and seeing so many youth especially involved in making their communities a better place and taking it upon themselves to create the things that they've been lacking, not really waiting for it to be created for them, not waiting for it to be given, but actually going out and, like you did, just creating that space, in a garage.
Yeah, that's how it started. And honestly, that's really the seed that was needed to give rise to this collective effort. Like, you once told me this city just needed like a meeting ground, like
Yeah.
a meeting point. And really it did, because that's how I got to meet a lot of the people that have been getting involved with building Selaco. And it's really amazing how powerful a common space can be.
Definitely.
Like, for the listeners that don't know, I got really inspired by certain places like Corazon del Pueblo in East Los Angeles, East Side Cafe in El Sereno, Tia Chuchas in Silmar. These are all spaces that just breed empowerment and the expression of our voices.
Big shout out to Chuco's Justice Center as well.
And
In
yes. We actually, yeah, one of our members, Jaime, he's involved in the Youth Justice Coalition. They have that space in, I think it's in Inglewood, right?
Right, Inglewood.
Yeah, and they do some amazing things fighting the school to prison pipeline and a lot of racial profiling and just injustices faced by the police on poor people of color.
Definitely. That's going to be in one of our upcoming podcasts as well, just because that's the 1% campaign to take 1% of city budgets from, the district attorney's office and the police department and other municipal offices that basically take our tax money to perform services, but to take just 1% of their combined budgets, which turns out to be about $100 million, and use it for community building. So that's, something we're definitely going to keep an eye on, and what some really amazing ideas that are coming out of that space.
$100 million. That is crazy. Just 1% of their budget is $100 million. Imagine all the community cultural centers we can establish around Los Angeles. Imagine all the resources we can give the kids in our neighborhoods. Like,
Go ahead.
okay, so yes, just imagine all that. It's pretty crazy to me. I want to get more involved and learn more about the 1% campaign. So Frank, what are some of your passions?
Well, Eric, as you know, because we've worked together on this community, is first and foremost, I think part of the problem with our society and the way it's become so degraded and so problematic in so many ways is specifically because of the lack of community. It starts with the families and the breakdowns of the family structure, but beyond that, it's the brothers, sisters, mentors, the teachers, people see each other on a very strict basis and don't often leave that structure, that standard. You know, if you're a teacher, you're a teacher, and you have certain limitations, and you can only go so far. But there's other ways, you know, to incorporate that after school programs and you know, just sports programs, alternative education, ways to build your community without adhering to just those strict roles and nothing else.
Why do you think there's such a lack of community? What do you think that comes from? That's a
I-
hard question.
Well, it's hard, and it's just hard to answer in short, really, because I think a lot of it comes from our social structure, from the corporate social structure, um, from the top down. I mean, it's um, capitalism, really, because capitalism is a profit-driven motive, and the only way you make more profit is by selling more things, and the only way you sell more things is if people buy them, and people are only going to buy them if they, you know, think they need them. And for them to need something new, they have to have something old that's not either working or not, or it's broken or it's cheap, and you know, so people get cheap things and they break and they buy more, and that breaks down because that goes everything from their kitchen appliances to their cars, you know, and that individuality and that need for more and more creates sort of breaks and schisms between people, because instead of, you know, working together and borrowing things from each other or fixing things, you know, they're just going to go buy more, and if they have to buy more, then that's theirs, and if it's theirs, then it's nobody else's. And you know, that singular mentality really breaks things down from the community level.
And that is why there is such a lack of community. Really, no, really, we live in a very individualistic like world, you know. Today our and it goes all the way back to like industrialization, you know. Before industrialization, like we had to like depend on each other, like to take care of each other, you know. And after that, we got factories and cars and this and that, and now we just have so many things now that like I'm a substitute teacher, and I walk around the schools and I see the kids like not even talking to each other. I just see them on their phones, like with their headphones on. So I think that it's weird. Technology is like it brings us together if you use it right, but it could be very like it could fragment you a lot if you use it without conscience.
And that's sort of what I was getting at. We now depend on things, not each other. And you're right. I mean, industrialization, we started depending on companies and corporations and started depending less on our community. You know, you were getting money, you were getting things from these companies, and that became your primary source of interaction. I mean, unfortunately, you know, right now, my primary source of interaction with other humans is at work. You know, I spend 8+ hours there a day, and so most of my time is interacting over work, and it's very superficial and very one track, you know. But it's places like this and working with you guys that allows me to actually speak my mind on issues that matter.
Yeah, a lot of things are very superficial. Like, I think that's why I love open mic so much, because they're just so organic, and you see people literally open up their souls to a crowd. Like, our lives could be very mundane. We go around every day just asking, "How are you doing?" And I'm okay. But being okay is not a feeling. Like, how do you feel today? How do you feel right now? You know, when I ask kids, "How do you feel?" at school, like they don't know how to respond to that because they don't feel good. A lot of times they don't feel well. They feel mad.
They're also scared, also like because people are so judgmental that they're just scared to let out their true emotions to people, and we live in a judgmental world. So I mean, just they're preconditioned to think a certain way. Also, I mean, from
Yeah.
when we were raised, we're preconditioned to be the best or succeed or be number one in everything, like or over other people. You know?
That individuality.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard. It's a tough line to walk between, you know, urging everyone and you know, telling them that it's great to be an individual, and you know, you've got to express yourself and move for yourself, but also do that in a community sense. Like, you're an individual, but you're working with others and you live with others. You can't separate it. You've got to be a part of the community, not apart from it.
Yeah. And that is really why like all the open mics started, and that is why SELACO is beginning, because of this issue that we go to our local community centers in Bell and like Huntington Park, and they are not community centers. They're blank spaces. They don't reflect the lived experiences of people in our neighborhoods, and it's really unfortunate because there's these spaces, but they're not really accessible to the community, you know. And I honestly I feel like people are more comfortable being in my crowded garage than at a city space.
It's real. It's raw. It's their experience, that lived experience. You know, I've lived in a garage before.
Yeah.
I'm pretty like we're, you know, we that's the experience we have.
Yeah.
You know, like we all are.
We're doing this from a patio room. Like, this is a patio. This isn't a room. This is a patio. Like,
Yeah.
how real it is.
It's still from the casa though.
Hey, a casa can be anything, right?
Yeah, right. I know, really. So you talked a lot right now about like the issues of the lack of community, the individualistic society. So this next question you sort of answered it already, but what are the biggest issues you have with the way society is structured? Would you still say it's the whole individualistic society and this culture of oneness, not being connected with sisters and brothers and
It's not just oneness, because I think everybody needs to recognize themselves as an individual and as, you know, one person in a larger scheme of things. But I think it comes down to separation, that feeling of separation, that feeling of the only way I can connect with somebody is through my phone, because, you know, I can text them something and they can take their time to reply, or I can post something to Facebook and the people that want to like it can like it, and I can post it to Instagram and they can see it, and, you know, if they want to comment they can. But it's different when you're like, hey, you know, I was thinking today about a farmer's market. What do you think about that? You know, if people aren't ready to interact on deep levels in person, because they can kind of hide themselves when they want to online, or be like, oh, well, my phone was off, or, you know, oh, I wasn't on Facebook today, or whatever. You know, they were on it at work all day.
not only that, but they could talk a lot of shit online.
And that's the other
yeah,
thing.
because they're hiding behind the computer. Yeah, it's like all our experiences are edited, like conversations, like delayed, like, you know, when somebody's gonna write back to you through text and you could see them typing and then they don't because they're like, oh, I'm probably gonna say something offensive, or it's all like so edited, and it just makes me feel so like I'm split, because technology is honestly how I promote like so much of the stuff we're trying to do, you know?
The difference, though, is that you, Eric, specifically use technology to promote positive face-to-face personal interaction. And I think that's where the difference is, and that's what it's for. That's how you connect online, on bringing people together for a bigger cause. That online community is not the cause. That's not the place in itself. That is, you know, a vehicle to bring you to something bigger.
Mhm.
At least in my opinion.
You haven't seen my Tumblr. No, I'm kidding. Nah, there's good stuff on the Tumblr, but yeah, Tumblr is all bad.
Dirty and hiding behind that keyboard saying what you want.
Tumblr, man, with all these anons going crazy.
Hey, I like those GIFs though. Some of those are pretty good.
Yeah, they're hilarious. I want to learn how to make GIFs, or GIFs.
GIFs? GIFs?
Big gifts.
GIFs?
Yes,
Alright.
yeah.
I like GIF peanut butter, so that's how I do it.
Nice.
Yeah, with peanuts inside though. Crunchy.
Creamy.
Crunchy.
All right. That's a debate for another day.
Okay, so would you say the solutions to these issues are like being really proactive and in starting like community centered spaces?
I think they are, and that was actually one of the things that was on my mind a lot on my way over here today was, you know, how much of an example am I? Because we talk about these things and we have these community events and stuff, but one of the things that I'm really passionate about is urban gardening. I think one of the most revolutionary things you can do is start feeding yourself and sort of unplug from that avenue that society has to control you, you know, GMOs and pesticides and all these things that are killing us, you know, eating poison. But at the same time, I eat at work all the time, and I see the Cisco truck pull up and offload all that crap. Like Cisco's one of the, I think, the largest provider of food and food products to the U.S. and a bunch of it's just processed crap essentially. And I eat that all the time, so it's like, how much of an example am I?
Yeah, it's tough. I've never heard of Cisco, but I know like the whole genetically modified um food, like the GMOs, like like it's bad for our health, it's dangerous, but I feel like all these corporations have infested everything in our like everyday lives that it's really really hard to get away from it. And it's the same argument I heard with the whole Occupy movement, like, oh, like you're a hypocrite. How could you be wearing Nikes or Adidas and you're against corporations, or you want to be the 99%? Like, dude, don't you get it? They have infiltrated every second of our lives. The only way we can get away from these types of corporations is if we literally like move to some forest.
Or if we create a forest.
that's
That's I guess my answer to the question in real is that you have to start somewhere. And I think these meetings and these community building events and the open mics and stuff, that's a place to start from. And like I told you before, if you provide people with that space, with that little spark, that spark becomes a flame, and before you know it, you have a fire to heat the whole house, to heat the casa.
Yeah, I like that metaphor, man. It's really true though, because it's amazing to me. Like, I told myself, you know what, I'm just gonna throw out my vibes out to the universe. I'm just gonna keep giving people my ideas, my visions, and look at what's been happening. Like, people want to be a part of something greater. And we were talking about like gangs yesterday too, like how a lot of kids in our communities join gangs at an early age because they want to feel like they have a family. They want to feel involved. And I was thinking, damn, how do we counteract gangs and all that gang violence? Like, of course, we need to give kids something else, some other movement and space to feel proud about being in, and to feel like they have a extended family. And that's where I always remember, like, Luis Rodriguez, he says community cultural centers literally save lives. Luis Rodriguez, governor, 2014, vote for him.
Vote, because there ain't nobody else on that ticket that's going to do anything for us.
Because he went on my garage to read, and this guy's been in the hood. He's been in poverty. He's worked in steel mills. He's an amazing poet. Side note, just, yeah, look out for him, Luis Rodriguez. Check him out and vote for him this year. All right, so moving.
That's a great segue, too, for one little clip we're going to include for you guys today called If I Were President. We took some interviews with the different people from SELACO, the Southeast LA Collective, at one of our meetings on April
13th.
On April 13th of this year, 2014. So Christian right now is going to play for you some of our answers.
What would you do if you were president, Rocio?
I would end the privatization of education.
What would you do if you were president, Jaime?
I would straight up abolish capitalism.
Whoa, damn. All right. What else would you do if you were president, Jaime?
I'd make all basic resources completely free. No paying for water, no paying for all those things that we need for life, And if people are hungry, people get hungry and they start starving, They could just come to the government. We don't give them any shit, and we just give them food. Everyone has food. Everyone has water.
Communist!
Fuck yeah.
What would you do if you were president, Adilene?
I were president, I would invest all my funds into creating a culturally relevant ethnic studies decolonizing curriculum for K through 12 schools, and I would mandate it at the universities.
You just heard some of the thoughts by some of the members of SELACO of what they would do if they were president. And I really liked what Adilene said about decolonizing education K through 12, because right now we do have pretty much one narrative story a lot of times it's like white America's story, and more and more we see ethnic studies like slashed from the curriculum. We more and more we don't see black poets being studied and brown poets, and I think multicultural education is really the best kind of education a kid can get.
If a kid doesn't see themselves reflected in what they're reading, then they can't connect to it. It's not on the same level as their everyday experience, and that's I think why people like your garage so much, because that's what they know.
Yeah, and I agree. It's not very relevant, and you know what? And this is something also. I was reading a book recently called "Made in America," and and it,
Do you remember?
I forgot the author,
Oh, okay.
but a lot of the white students in high schools were expressing that they don't connect with the curriculum either, even if it is a lot of white authors. They say that that's not their lived experience, that it's not their story. So I thought that was really interesting.
There's a reason Mark Twain was one of the most accepted and widely read authors in America, because he was one of the first to truly write an American narrative, not an English narrative, not a European narrative, but something that happened here in the United States on that, epic novel level. It gave people something they could connect with in a fantasy realm, but also in a very visceral lived experience.
Yeah, I really liked what Arilene said a lot, and what Jaime said too about everyone should just have basic needs. Basically, abolishing poverty. I think that's really radical. Like I think a lot of the statements expressed by some of the people in right now were pretty radical in some point, maybe by the perspective of other people.
That's exactly what I want to talk about too. It's what is radical, because I mean it's an idea, and these things are oh, they're radical, they're different and stuff. But these, I don't know. For me personally, I know more people that would rather see these things implemented than people that would want to see more corporate ownership and more legalization of takeovers and mergers and consolidation of power. I know more people that would want to see urban gardens than see bigger corporations.
I think radical has like like a bad vibe to it because it's been giving that through like we've
Through the people in power.
yeah, like with the Black Panthers and with
Well,
like and
it's going against the norm or whatever the norm is.
yeah, radical is basically challenging the elite. I think that's why it's called radicalism, because there's a big, please do not confuse radical with extremist, please.
And extremist is, that's another keyword. It's made up. It wasn't even in the American dialogue before 2000. It was extremist is something new, something created, just the way radical was something that became a big talking point in the 60s and 70s when you had people out there organizing. It was radical to see something new, but it wasn't radical. These were things that had happened throughout our history, at both in the US and across the world. There are groups of people who become unsatisfied with the way their government is ruling or the way their community is acting, and they speak out and gather to change it. And I don't think that's radical. I think that's historical.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's commendable. It's a noble thing. It's a noble cause, and but like like I said right now, radical and extremist not the same thing. But what I consider like an extremist is like those people that are in the West Baptist Barrel Church, like, and they go around saying like I hate fags, or God hates fags, and they go talk things about Muslims at college campuses. They go to my campus all the time.
They go to almost everyone. You can see them all over. They make tours of it.
Those are extremists to me.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, there's extremists on different sides of the coin, I guess.
And I think that's a good point, is that there's, extremists and radicals on both sides, and depending on who's using the word is the connotation that it comes with. And there's a lot of radical right-wing people in power. How many radical leftists are there? Is there a communist member of Congress? No. Are there libertarians? Yes. Are there far right? Yes. Are there far left? No. And so I don't think stigmatizing the word radical is, fair at all, but it's politics, so,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, it really sucks. Having to feel like you gotta like step on eggshells. You don't want to like make people, oh, he's a radical, like, or like when really you just give a fuck.
Right? That's what I'm saying. Oh, I'm radical because I don't want a Walmart in my community. I'm radical because I'd like to see people grow their own food, catch their own rainwater. I'd like to see people learn the way they want to. I want to see them trained and successful. Is that radical?
Apparently it is. Apparently it is. And you know what? That's going to be something up for debate like for forever of what radical is. But really, my definition of radical is going against the elite, the power structure. That's radical.
That's also populist. And populist, by definition, is something that the general population wants. The system that's in place does not benefit the population of our nation. It doesn't benefit everyday Americans. If anything, it sucks the money out of them and then abuses them with it.
Exactly. Yes, you cannot live off minimum wage when freaking gas is 4.20, 9. Seriously. But those opinions were expressed by some of the members in SELACO, and what I wanted to say is that these people are not presidents, and you know what? Quite frankly, maybe they would never want to be presidents. They would never want to be stuck in that system and eaten by crony capitalism that goes on in honestly our White House. So what are they doing now? How are they getting involved? We're doing what we can. We all have busy lives. We're all in like our early 20s or mid 20s, and we're going to college, or we have side projects. We're going to school. We're internships. Like we're just. I honestly feel like the people I've been revolved around are doing whatever they can. Like
the power structure is really built for those of privilege and of the correct skin color. I mean, the whiter the better, honestly, and that's works across the board. That's not just saying, oh, hey, white as in European or white as in English. No, that's a lighter skinned Mexicano is looked at more favorably. I mean, you look at Univision or Telemundo, it's who are the anchors? White, light skinned, light hair. You look at the black culture too, and someone very dark skinned is looked at less favorably than somebody, more of a lighter chocolate brown.
Beyonce.
Who is blonde in most of the new Pepsi commercials and videos and stuff, and Shakira too. Yeah. I mean, I think that just goes throughout society and nobody really talks about it. It's like, oh, it's the white people's problem, but it's not a white problem in terms of race. It's a white problem in terms of perception.
Yeah. Even in Mexico, that's the issue too. Like the most like undervalued, underrepresented, the most impoverished people are the darker skinned Mexicans, and the ones that are really, really native to the land, like the really indigenous folks, like the ones that were just born from the earth, are the ones stepped on the most, and you really see like this pattern of like the white green-eyed Mexicano is like put on display as a model and like on these telenovelas, but the other ones, oh, es un indio, like they just like
dismiss them.
Yeah.
It's going on. I mean, everywhere in Brazil. I heard a NPR segment on that, and it was crazy. Like they actually favor the indigenous people there are looked down upon completely.
Yeah. And that's extremely unfortunate. And it really bothers me like that we as a world look down so much on the most indigenous peoples of these lands, like it happened with the Native Americans, it happens with the natives in the lands of Mexico, and it happens honestly everywhere.
Speaking of race and radicalism, I just wanted to share a little experience real quick that I had about 2 weeks ago. I was helping organize a playground in San Juan Capistrano, which is a big community of both low-wage wage immigrant workers and high wage wealthy corporate workers, corporate owners, CEOs, etc. And I was driving back after, having spent all day volunteering at this park and trying to make things better, for that community. It was an apartment complex. They didn't have any place to play. We were trying to make this community better and help them, because the community members were doing it themselves. We're just trying to help facilitate. Big shout out to Neighbor Works and the Villa community in San Juan Capistrano. But on my way home, driving right in front of Mission San Juan were a bunch of right-wing radicals of lighter skin, lighter complexion, with big signs reading, "Go home, Beaners," immigrate, like no more illegal immigrants, go back to Mexico, just shouting things and holding signs in front of a mission, in front of a Spanish mission on indigenous land, yelling about the improper attitudes of illegal immigrants. And these were people who had descended from conquerors, from people who didn't immigrate, they migrated forcefully. And you're going to tell me that these other people who live on this land that is connected, these wetbacks who crossed a river when these other people's ancestors crossed an ocean to get here, like, this is the land that they grew up on, and you're going to call them illegal immigrants? Like, that thought to me is radical, because you have to think a lot of really strange things to call somebody an immigrant, even though their land is connected to the one you stand on, when your land is across an entire ocean.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is, I never thought of that as radical. I always saw him as like ignorant or whatever, bigot. But yeah, that is radical, and it's easy to forget when you're born into privilege. I'm privileged too. I'm first generation Mexican American. I'm extremely privileged because my parents were able to cross over, and I was born here. So it's always important to check your privileges, understand your privileges. But a lot of people, that come from generations and generations of colonialism, they forget their privilege. They forget that, hey, like, if it wasn't for immigration, legal or illegal, we wouldn't be here right now. And side note, I hate the word illegal alien, and my professors at school need to stop using that shit for real, because I'm gonna check them soon.
And that's part of what we were talking about, the narrative. It's the people who are in power who write these narratives, and if you don't see yourself in it, you end up getting brainwashed by it, because you think of yourself as strange, as alien, as foreign, because you're not reflected in that which you learn. And the vast majority of Americans feel alienated by what they're taught, and it's not just a generalization without basis. You look at the statistics of the kids that drop out and the kids that are going into the prison system, and it's black, brown, and poor white. And what do you see on TV? Big houses with privileged peoples and iPhones and, nice cars and stuff. And that's not what they're living. They're living in trailer parks and apartment complexes and slums and, ghettos, and they're not living anywhere that looks anything like TV. I mean, going back to Fresh Prince, that was the black ideal, but where were they living,
Beverly Hills?
Beverly Hills.
But that's extremely rare,
Yeah. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that these are the things that are put out as ideals, but these aren't the things that we can connect with.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother theme right there, media and its influence on everyday people. Media is like extremely powerful. I think people, because we're born into it, our lives are revolved around like media throwing like images at us, constantly advertising. Like, we're not even aware of how really powerful it is, and how it gives us stereotypes, how it implants in us fears, how it implants in us prejudices. Like, we're not really aware of it, and I think we could do a whole hour on that just alone. But going back to the segment that we talked about, the if I were president, and the whole radical notion of like what some ideas may be, or what radicalism is, I think right now, as a collective and as a group, we're grassroots. We're starting literally from, like, there's literally grass inside my garage. That's how grassroots we are. Yeah, there's literally grass in my garage, and We don't have real. We just are using the most intimate resources we have. Like we meet at Sunday's Best Thrift Store. That's one of the members' family's business. Like that's an intimate place because that's their business, and we meet when it's closed. People come to my garage. That's an intimate place. They need to use my restroom and sit on my toilet when they gotta use a restroom. That's intimate. Like we're like using what we can, you know, and we're building these bonds, and it's awesome because we have gotten so much feedback. Like, the LA Times wrote an article on like Alivio and Southeast LA, and it's amazing that it's being put on the paper for something positive because most of the news out of here is like corruption and negativity, and people are really attracted to the notion that hey, like there's people that care. Like if I hook up with them, like we could do good things, you know? It makes people feel really good.
We're not presidents, but this is what we can do, and this is what we're doing. And I keep coming back to this narrative because I think this is exactly what we're doing. You know, all you read about in the papers is murder and robbery and rape and all these negative things, and that's what you see in your city, and that's what you read about, and that's what's coming at you. So how are you gonna be able to break that cycle without that? But now you start reading about more positive things and people who care and people who are doing good things, and that makes you want to do things too. And I think what we've learned from this experience is that people want this. People want this, and they're doing whatever they can to come there. There's over 120 people at the last Alivio, growing from just like 20, with tons of people here from out of town, from all over Los Angeles, LA County, you know, here to do whatever they could to make something better. And if this is what they see, if this is what's put out, imagine the reflections that people would have. If instead of seeing violence, they would see, you know, positivity. They would see building instead of tearing down. They would see coming together instead of tearing apart. And what could that do for our communities?
Yeah, I think it gives people a lot of hope, and it makes them feel really connected. And talking about narratives and all that, like I was specifically really happy, like when I started noticing that there was some like African American people that were coming to the garage, and I had to put them on the spot. Like I know it probably made them feel awkward, but I had to say, yo, there are African American people in my garage. Like, do you understand that in the city of Bell there is no African Americans or Huntington Park? Like, it's rare. And now people in my community that are never exposed to the African American perspective, now they're seeing it in a real live version, an honest version, not some bullshit like that comes out on like World Star Hip Hop where the most negative things are highlighted, or like on the media where the only black man to look up to is like a sports athlete, or I don't know, some like hero gangbanger. Like I just feel like the black perspective is like really hijacked, and like uh, there's just all these perspectives that are being shared at Alivio. Over 100 people went. It was insane. And Luis Rodriguez was there, who was running for governor, and I was so overwhelmed, dude. Like it was overwhelming.
In just a few short months, from just providing that spark, that meeting place, and allowing it to grow organically as a grassroots movement, this has become something so much bigger than ourselves. And even if we stopped right now, today, it would live on through the lives we've touched, because words are not something you can take back. Words live in people's mind and fester and grow in both the positive and the negative. So if you just keep putting out that negativity, that's all that's going to grow there. But through this, through Alivio, through these events, through these open mics, through this community, people are talking, they're interacting face to face and getting these different perspectives, these different narratives, and thinking about them and sharing them with people who aren't there. The growth and the reach is expanding, and it's just so beautiful to see.
Yeah, and if anyone out there is wondering, like, what, a garage, an open mic, Alivio, if you never heard of it, basically, I spoke with a woman named Lady Bosco. She hosts an open mic at Speakeasy. One day I was telling her, you know what, we need a community cultural center where in Southeast LA. I want to do something close to Corazon del Pueblo where they feed the community by inviting the community to be teachers. It's an autonomous space. So I always thought this idea was extremely powerful because you're inviting the community to be teachers and brothers and sisters of the community. So
Get some water there.
so I spoke with Lady Bosco and and she told me, I told her, Lady Bosco, like, we need a community cultural center, a place where we can have forums, where we can have alternative forms of education, where we can teach the men in the city about machismo, about consent, about rape culture. We need a place where we can harvest the minds of young people, where we can teach kids guitar, because there's a lot of people in these cities that know how to play guitar. And we need a place where we can all come together and actually feel connected, and it's genuine, it's not superficial. And she saw that I was really passionate about the idea, and she's like, you know what, Eric, your heart is in the right place, but you're thinking too ahead. And I looked at her and I was like, I'm thinking too ahead. She's like, you're overwhelming yourself with the idea that you need to pay rent to a public space to have community. She's like, don't you have a home? And I told her, yeah, I have a home. She's like, do you have a backyard? I'm like, yes. She's like, do you have a garage? I'm like, yeah, I have a garage. She's like, there's your community. And I was like, blown away. Like, I was like, am I gonna start a community in my garage? And now, like, fast forward, boom, like
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
You did.
yeah, it's insane how it was a risk. I was scared, like, with the whole equipment buying
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, like, you're inviting strangers into your house, into your home where you live. It's a scary thought, but it takes a lot of courage, man, to do what you did, I think.
Can we just give him a quick round of
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, I appreciate it. But like, ever since the attention started like coming to me, like I was like, no, like that's why SELACO makes me feel good, because SELACO is providing alivio. It's not me. I don't want people to think Eric. I want people to think, oh crap, like a collective effort is bringing this event, you know?
I think that's exactly what community is. It's a collective effort. It's collaboration. It's an exchange of ideas. And what this is growing into is so much more than just an open mic. The open mic was an access point. It was a forum. It was a place for people to, start to get to know each other and exchange these ideas that weren't being talked about anywhere else. And, my privilege, I know some of you guys share this, is that, I was able to go to college. I mean, I worked for it. I had help. I was by no means on my own in it. But that experience opened me up to so many things that I wasn't even aware of, that I had experienced. And that was my privilege. And if I would have kept going and kept on my path before I met you, Eric, I would have ended up in Oregon or Washington or maybe somewhere in Northern California, working with a different community, exporting my skills. But coming back and giving back to my own community and sharing that privilege and showing people that these things are possible, that we don't have to be afraid of each other, that everybody knows something, everybody can contribute, and giving them an opportunity to do that, it just grows like wildfire, and people start exchanging ideas with each other, and this is just growing and growing and growing.
Yeah. Damn, I did not know that because of me you came back after college. No, I'm kidding. But you said something really interesting, like, if exporting your skills, your knowledge, your talent, your heart, that's another reason why Alivio had to be in the garage. And that's another reason why SELACO is focused on our own communities, because, and this is something I say at the open mics, like, I got tired of seeing myself extract my talents, because I was going to all these open mics in Long Beach, in downtown LA, in Santa Monica, in East LA, but I was like, you know what sucks? Like, we don't have anything here, like in HP or BG, like in Maywood. Like we don't have any cool spots. Like we have endless parties, quinceañeras. We have kickbacks where we could go get really messed up in, but like we don't have a space like an open mic or local plays or music. We don't have anything of that. So I really think this movement is about keeping our hearts here and our talents here, because some of the people in Selaco, they worked in nonprofits before. They do work in nonprofits now. And they said, you know what? Like, I've been involved in movements, but nothing here in like my own hometown. And that's why they feel passionate about this movement that's growing, you know?
I think going back to some of our earlier discussions about, narratives and radicalism and what we're doing and stuff, and the way to fix the problems in our society, the way to find a solution is through community, because if everybody worked on their own community, we wouldn't have to export anything. There would be, talent and education and provided services and food and everything if you kept it smaller, and you brought that focus back to your community and those around you. We'd all be able to provide for each other, and you wouldn't have to have these huge distribution channels for food from thousands of miles away, and you wouldn't have to have all these things shipped all over to each other. If you could repair your TV instead of buying a new one, if you could buy things from your local farmers, if you could do things locally, if you could go to plays that were put on by your local production company, if you could go to an open mic night to hear local artists, if you could go to a comedy show with homies from around the hood telling you jokes that are real, you're not going to have to go to big theaters owned by corporations. You're not going to have to buy things from big box stores that come into your community and suck the money and the life out. You're going to be doing things locally.
Yeah, I'm thinking self-sustainable.
Ooh, sustainability, big word. That's radical right there.
I think that's what you're talking about. Like, really, with feeding yourself and learning how to fix your own things and providing your own communities with your own forms of entertainment by the community for the community. It all comes back to, like, being self-sustainable. Not only to live and eat, but to have a good time.
And do you guys realize how hard it is to talk about these kind of subjects to people? Like, they automatically label you, some sort of radical hippie, or, like...
Labeling. Yes, you know what I've been called lately 3 times already? Hipster. I'm like, what the fuck? Dude, I don't even dress like a hipster. Like, why are you calling me a hipster? You're insulting hipsters. They actually dress pretty spiffy compared to me. Like,
I think they're actually elevating hipsters. I think you do some more real stuff.
You know what? Like, I don't know. Like, these kids called me a hipster the other day. Like, because I told them about the open mic that I'm hosting from the garage. I told them about, like, some activism I've been involved in. And they called me hipster. And I'm like, why are kids calling? I think they're calling things they don't understand hipster now. Like, they don't get it. Like, they don't connect with it. So they're labeling as a hipster. It's weird.
I think it's part of that labeling. It's part of that generational thing too, because there were people before us that hippies, that referred to a certain generation trying to do something very specific. And the problem with that is that those hippies became CEOs and corporate sponsors, and everything moves with time. But I think this hipster generation is kind of referring back to that, and it's hey, people between the age of 18 and 32, or right around there, have grown up in this society, and they're tired of it because they've seen the separation and the real very concrete ramp up of technology in our everyday life. And I remember playing outside as a kid, and I remember growing older and seeing that kids don't do that anymore. And I remember when I got a cell phone, my first cell phone, that little Nokia, a little brick, and being like, wow, like it had Snake, and I was stoked. And now kids 2 and 3 and 4 years old are playing Angry Birds and stuff. Like, they're growing up on it. And so there's a very definite gap between those who didn't grow up with any of these things, like Atari was huge, but now kids are addicted and they don't even know it. Like, all they do is game online, and all they know is a cell phone, and So we've kind of grown up in between that, and we're hipster because we've seen both sides and we're picking one, and it's not the technology.
I never thought of, like, that's so true, because we did grow up like during the age where there wasn't cell phones. There was like beepers, and even then I was like, what, why is my uncle's crotch ringing, like, like
Seems like a different problem.
Well, we grew up during like the uprising of the internet. Like we saw it pretty much progress to what it is now, and that's a major thing. Like it's a very narrow margin of people that experience that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never thought of this, but yeah, we grew up. I'm from, born 1989. So my early years, like, I had no influence because it didn't exist of internet or cell phones or technology, none of that. But so I was playing around a lot with my cousins outside and, scraping my knees like a normal human boy. And now, like, I see, like, boys on my block, like, sitting on their porch with an iPad or like riding their bikes with the iPhone, and they're barely like 9 years old. I'm like, what the hell? Get off your iPhone, kid. You're gonna hurt yourself. Like, it's just weird because even as a sub, like I was subbing for fourth grade. The kids, instead of copying down their homework at the end of the day, like I used to do, they all get their iPhones out of their pockets. These are fourth graders, and they're like, I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you taking yourself the teacher lets us take pictures with our iPhones of the homework so we don't copy it. I'm like, okay. I'm like, you shouldn't even have a iPhone. You're like 9 years old.
Hey, they're going paperless, all right? It's eco-friendly.
That's true. But yeah.
I mean, there's a double-sided sword, and I say it in jest, but I mean, that's the thing. They're not gonna have to write pretty soon. Everything's gonna be typed. I remember learning cursive. I still write in cursive, and everybody looks at me like I'm crazy. I mean, that was taught to me in school as the way we were going to write. And only when I started getting to like 7th, 8th grade and up into high school, they wanted everything print again, And it was like, well, there was an art to this. It was a skill. It was something interactive. You could actually write in your own way. And everybody's was a little different. And there's like, no, standard everything. And then you started typing stuff. And then you had to adhere to MLA format. And then, it seems to just get stricter and stricter as you get older. And that individuality that they're pushing on you starts to become selective.
Yeah. So it's the world is changing extremely fast with the whole technology thing, and like, how do you cannot regulate like the kids growing up like from like out of the womb already playing Angry Birds. How do you like, I don't even know how to regulate that.
It's kind of like Angry Birds, right? You just,
Well, you gotta take like other countries into example, like Switzerland or something. Like, I think in Switzerland, they have a program where they only test kids like once or twice every couple of years. Like it's not like the SATs, or they don't have anything like that there. And they have more recess too. There's more time to play, and they actually do better in school that way.
Yeah, there's a few countries that in Europe that they don't really like the standardized tests like our country loves, and the kids have more free time. And
It's just, it would be more, I think it would be more complicated or it'd be hard to implement those kind of structures now into this society, because we're so used to this kind of structure in our schools. Like, it's crazy.
It's a radical idea.
Yeah, it is.
To abolish that.
You said the secret word.
It's extremely radical. Honestly, education is extremely linked with like politics and bureaucracy, and that's why bilingual education is such a hot topic. Like, bilingual education, like, if you know more than one language, that's a good thing, but it's extremely politicized, and it's such a hot topic. It's crazy.
I mean, part of the issue is with other countries, they're so close to one another that it's like, oh, hey, they have to know, German and French and English and Swiss, or, whatever else. They have to know multiple languages. But you can drive across a whole continent, for thousands of miles in any direction and only speak one language. And so here it's different, but they don't like the language that is next door, I mean, Spanish comes with so much connotation of, oh, these dirty Mexicans, these beaners, these workers, these low wage earners, and I think that's part of the stigma. And let's just, keep in mind, this is the expressed views of myself, as it is with all of us. It's not anything to do with SELACO. These are just, my own views. But if I'm being completely honest, education is not about education. It's not about making kids think about anything. It's about preparing them for the system. It's about learning to follow rules and check boxes and read the directions. 1, 2, 3, do this, then that. Get up, go to work, get off, go drink, go home, go to sleep.
Yeah, it breaks my heart to hear that, but it's really true. I said it last week. If your only form of education is school, you're not educated. And speaking as an educator and as a future educator, it really sucks because I have to like be under the system that is really robotic, that doesn't use human judgment, that standardizes tests the kids to death, and it really is a form of just social engineering, preparing the kids. Social engineering, preparing them to follow this, follow that, and not really challenge status quo or break barriers or be radical.
And part of the problem with that is that we're doing ourselves a disservice, because kids who don't know how to think critically, who don't know how to answer a question or say how they feel or what's going on in their head, who don't know how to communicate, become alienated. They become, the products of what they're taught. They become mentally unstable. Why do you think we have kids with so many disorders, air quotes on that? It's things that are created for them, created through these processes. If a kid is told what to think and not how to think, then they don't know what to think in the first place, because they know what is told. They know the answer. They don't know how they got there. They don't know what it means, but they know that's the answer you're looking for.
Yeah, that's basically regurgitating.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
That's what they want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. It's regurgitating like the test, they're just regurgitating on essay tests, in the standardized tests, they just need to fill in boxes. They don't know why they gotta fill them in or what they're even writing, but they know that they're gonna get the answer right if they fill it in a certain way. And it doesn't really assess kids' rationale, their ability to think creatively, their ability to be leaders or to work in groups.
And this is what I was sort of getting at before I went off on that tangent. The product of this system does not know how to be an engineer. They don't know how to be a critical thinker. They don't know how to be an educator. They don't know how to be a leader. They don't know how to be a scientist or an astronaut or any kind of, creative, well-paid, well-established professional. They know how to fill in boxes and write reports and enter data and answer a phone and do all these somewhat menial tasks that really just overwhelm our workforce with low paid, low wage, low respect, low quality of life workers.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because I'm going into teaching, and I want to really nurture critical thinking and critical pedagogy. I want to actually tell my students question me, challenge me. Don't be disrespectful, but don't talk back, but talk to me. That's what I want my future students to be able to do. Challenge the authority, but don't disrespect me.
And there's a way to do it, but that involves thinking critically. It's how do I pose this question
Respectfully or something. Yeah, exactly.
honestly and respectfully, but not as just a regurgitated question. It's not, oh, how are you doing today? It's, why do you look sad today? Or why is this going on or that? It's asking a question about a book, not, oh, hey, in chapter 3, he said this. That is why he was sad for the book. It's, no, what was he experiencing? His parents were, on drugs in the book, and that's probably what he saw. And since that's what he saw, maybe he was going to turn out like that, or maybe he could go the other way and become a police officer or do something because he saw his parents and he didn't want it like that, and they can link that together, and they can think about this critically and then assess it in terms of their own lives. They don't just answer, oh, he did this because of that, because that's what was in the book. No, they can think about what's in the book. They can think about what they've been taught and ask themselves questions and process it and really understand the material, not just memorize it.
And that's why a lot of parents across the nation now are like opting out their kids from standardized testing. A lot of teachers are risking their jobs and opting out kids in the public education system because the high stake testings, they put not only so much pressure on the students, but it's so much pressure on the teachers because students know that they're not going to get a grade for it. Like, they're not going to fail the class if they fail the exam. So a lot of times they go into the exam like not really caring. Like, I got a test for a whole week. Is this gonna go on my class report? No. So on a lot of times, like, they're like, I don't care what I fill in. So that really stresses out teachers because some of their jobs are on the line, and that's where I feel like this whole accountability thing is like being hijacked, and like it's just all messed up. The emphasis on the emphasis on high stake testing is like disproportionate.
And it really doesn't do anything for the students. It doesn't show how they can think or what they can think. It doesn't actually reflect anything about their intelligence level.
I think what needs to happen is that community colleges and universities need to start pressuring the state because they know that most students out of public education systems are not ready for college, for college work, for college writing, for college reading. They know most students are not, and there's some professors that have written about these topics that students are being standardized tested so much that they're coming into colleges completely unprepared, and they need to take a lot of remedial courses because they're not ready. Like, speaking from experience, um I went into college and I was like, where the hell am I right now? Like, I don't understand what the hell's going on. I felt really stupid compared to all my classmates. I didn't feel like I belonged, and not only that, but I was Latino, and like a lot of my classmates were white, so I never had that experience. Like, in high school, all my classmates were brown, so it was really different. Like, all my classmates were white. I majored in English. All my classmates were white. Every author I was reading was white. Every professor I had was white. I was almost always the brown one, and I'm like, I don't relate to this shit, but I like poetry. Like, I liked Luis Rodriguez, so I kept at it. Like, I don't know.
And that's, I think that's really important, is that we are doing a disservice to ourselves as, people of color by not educating our kids, by not investing more in them of our own time, of our own effort, and depending on these schools to get them prepared for anything. I mean, I don't know what it was, and this is my privilege speaking, but when I was little, I felt like from second grade on, I just kept learning the same thing, about the presidents and the Civil War and World War I and World War II and, these hippies in the 60s. And I learned that same thing in almost every class up through high school, and I got bored to shit of it. So what did I do? I spent my time in the library. I started reading books, and I couldn't wait to get to college just because I knew that as soon as I got to that level, I might actually learn something again, because high school wasn't teaching me shit. And the funny thing was, nobody else saw it because I was spending all these times in these books and, reading about these other worlds and these different time periods and the different socioeconomic developments of our history. And these were words and ideas that I learned on my own. I didn't learn them in school. I mean, I was in the library, but I didn't learn them through that. And in high school and in middle school, I was a crap student. I really was. My parents didn't think I was going to graduate. I got a couple F's. I got, bad reports, trouble, all kinds of stuff. And my family was just so grateful for the fact that I graduated high school. And in my head, I was thinking, why are you guys like so happy? Like, I knew I was going to do this. I mean, I guess everybody saw it out. They saw me as a radical, as this little, long-haired punker kid with, no aspects in life other than to stick his nose in a book or have his headphones on, and they didn't see what was going on in my head during all these periods.
Yeah, and I think that describes a lot of like teenagers right now, like disenfranchised youth, like all over like these cities, like they don't connect with the content, with the teacher, with the material. It's all like roboticized. Is that even a word? It's all robotic, and it's just it's really unfortunate because we have all these young minds every day that we can nurture, and I tell the kids like when I'm subbing, like you don't know me and I don't know you, but it's crazy how powerful you are. And they're like, what? Like I really like try to implant like positivity in their brain. Like I'm like, your life is important. Like you're a powerful human being. Like, do you understand that the most powerful thing in this planet is not the atomic bomb, but the mind? Because the mind created the atomic bomb. And they're just like, what? Like, they like, I never heard this, Like, and it's just, I don't know. I think connecting with kids on a personal level is it goes a long way, and like kids will go out of their way when you connect with them personally, and like when they see that you actually like give a shit about them, like they don't want to like disappoint you. But it's there's a lot of things that need to be changed, and the only way to change like standardized testing and a lot of things by in education in our communities, the word like radical keeps coming up to my mind. I don't know, dude. Like, cause you know what? The other day I had to teach these kids, British literature, poems, and I was like, this sucks, dude. Like, I have to teach these high school kids that are gonna be like, this person died 500 years ago, and like the poems are like so irrelevant to our world right now. I'm like, and they're all like British. They're all white, of course. And I'm like thinking, why can't we at least teach them like poetry from like Long Beach white people? At least if it's like Long Beach or like local poetry, like.
We're on YouTube, so we can say it, and I saw you and I heard you. Fuck that. That ain't real. That's not what these kids are used to. This isn't gonna help them any. This is just gonna alienate them and make them want to quit school because there's nothing that they see.
This makes them hate poetry. The only reason why I really like poetry was because I started writing it for a little band I was in high school, like, and I thought that was poetry. And then I met like I ran into like Latino poets, like talking about real relevant things to my life, and I was like, whoa, like I like poetry, like not that type of poetry that I keep being like taught in school, but like the other type of poetry that I discovered in on my own.
And I think what is kind of been circled around in all this is consciousness and decision making, because these were decisions we made to start writing poetry and to pursue that and to pursue education on our own and to keep reading and to do things for ourselves. And these were conscious decisions. And it seems like what you're trying to implant with your kids is the fact that they're conscious beings, that life is important and that life is in their power, and that they can make decisions to change their life. They're the ones writing their own story, and that if they don't and they let other people write it for them, they're not going to be happy with it, and they're just going to end up a drone just like everyone else. And I think this is just me pushing for the next agenda, but hey, next episode on consciousness, anyone?
It's that positive reinforcement that you give them. Like, they might not get it at home, they might not get it. Those are the kids that are lost, the kids that don't get it at home or they don't get it anywhere. Those are lost causes, and we need less of that. So that's good that you're doing that.
And I think that's exactly the problem with our society. It's like they see that as a lost cause, and as long as they pass the test, they don't care. But they don't realize that these lost causes are lost because they don't see themselves, and that they're aware enough to know that they don't see themselves, and that they're thinking so far past just the boxes to the fact that I don't like these boxes because they don't reflect me. And that is brilliance. These kids have so much potential, and it's just being overlooked and discarded.
Yeah, I think a way to maybe like start counteracting all like the robotic education is to like implement something in our public education where it's mandatory for kids to do community efforts, community collective projects, like where
Service learning.
yeah, like, but I mean, I never had service learning, but I think there should be more of that, like, where they can actually like feel like, whoa, like I did this, I had an impact, I created something, you know, like they don't have those opportunities really, like in the classroom. It's hard to give them those opportunities, you know, if you just keep them in the class.
I think this is part of what we were saying about community and doing things ourselves and narrative and all of that. It's like if you give these kids the opportunity to clean up their own school, to clean up their park, to build something in wood shop, to fix a car, these are essential pieces of education once upon a time that have been utterly just removed and totally thrown away in lieu of these standardized tests, because that's how you show you can educate somebody. But these kids don't see a beginning or an end. They just see an endless repetition of tests and of filling in boxes, and it doesn't show them the timeline of doing something to completion or learning a skill. And if you give them something else to put their hands in, to show this is just a piece of wood in the beginning, and at the end of it, it's a birdhouse for your mom, or it's a cabinet for your books, or this is just an empty lot, but it can be a garden, or it can be a soccer field, or this is just a bunch of trash, but it can be recycling, it can be another bottle, it can be anything, showing them that something is only limited to what they can make it.
Basically, the power of the self through good education, not
through communal education, through learning this from people who know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that goes, we can do the full circle right now, saying like we just talked a lot about education and the way it's robotic, but that's something that I, as a SELACO member, want to change, and I want to provide alternative forms of education. And a lot of the things we're doing are alternative forms of education. This is an alternative form of education. This is hearing real thoughts at the real moment, about issues, and we have like some stances that are pretty unheard or radical, whatever. But alternative forms of education, community gardens, alternative forms of education, hopefully workshops that I can have soon about teaching about consent and rape culture and things that affect our communities. And I know other people want to be involved in more like things that highlight domestic violence and know your rights against police officers. All these things basically just to empower the people in these communities. And once again, these opinions and views are by the people that said them, not by the collective.
I think that's what we got.
Yes, that's what we have, and here we are, SELACO from the Casa, and it's nice and cozy here now.
We're not presidents, but this is what we can do.
Okay,
We're almost out of time, so if you want, what's going on tomorrow? Yeah, wrap it up.
okay. Tomorrow we're gonna have Corazon y Miel open mic. Look that up on well, Facebook. Yeah, on Facebook.com. Go to Corazon y Miel, and they'll have it most likely up on their feed. And if you're interested in anything with Alivio, I need artists to donate their art for that night. The next Alivio is gonna be April 25th, which is a Friday. Alivio open mic runs the fourth Friday of each month. The next one's April 25th, and we always are looking for local artists to donate their art for the night, and we'll display your art. Please email me at alivio.openmic@gmail.com. That is ALIVIO.openmic@gmail.com. Do you want to?
And this is just one more reminder that Corazon y Miel will be April 15th at the Corazon y Miel restaurant on Atlantic Boulevard in the city of Bell.
Thank you, Frank. And if you can, please go to Facebook and look up Sela Collective and add them as a friend. That's Sela Collective, SELACOLLECTIVE.
This guy's a teacher, ladies and
Did I get that right? I need to write things down when I'm spelling.
And also, if you guys are interested in contacting us for the podcast, go ahead and contact us at from the Casa, CASA, podcast at gmail.com.
That's from the Casa at
No, from the Casa podcast.
from the Casa pod. Okay. From the Casa podcast at gmail.com. If you're interested in, maybe you want to introduce a theme we should talk about, or you want to come on to the Casa and talk, that would be cool too. We're located in Huntington Park, California.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been From the Casa.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you, Christian.
Happy listening.
She said, why you make it so hard just to love you? Can't you see I don't see nothing above you? But every time we argue, you seem to run. But when the weekend comes, you just wanna have fun with your friends. Do you forget about me? Are you better than me? Can't you see you make it harder to breathe? I know you say that I argue a lot, but the thing is, I just love you a lot. He replied, why you always gotta be nagging? Can't you see I'm real stressed and I need